Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. First, I want to thank everybody that joined me for the surprise live stream last night. I was just walking around, talking, having a good old time. Well, as good a time as we can have, of course. And, every day it just gets worse and worse and worse. And we're gonna have to start doing something. People are just not getting it. They're not understanding exactly what is going on. Every single day I sit there and I think, how did it get this bad? How did it get this bad? That would be the football team, if you guys were wondering. But okay, let me just go ahead and jump into it, because I'm gonna go crazy if I don't bring this one to you guys right now. I stumbled upon a PDF today, and as you can see here, it's the CDC's website. That's where I got this. So this is called Interim Operational Considerations for Implementing the Shielding Approach to Prevent C-19 Infections in Humanitarian Settings. Oh man, what could this be? What could this be? Well, let's take a look. This document presents considerations from the perspective of U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention for implementing the shielding approach in humanitarian settings as outlined in guidance documents focused on camps, displaced populations, and low-resource settings. The approach has never been documented and has raised questions and concerns among humanitarian partners who support response activity in these settings. The purpose of this document is to highlight potential implementation of challenges of the shielding approach from CDC's perspective and guide thinking around implementation in the absence of empirical data. Considerations are based on current evidence known about the transmission and severity of the situation, may need to be revised as more information becomes available. Please check the following CDC website periodically for updates. And then it gives you the whatever. Now, let's go over this first paragraph real quick, because I don't know if you guys heard what I heard when reading this. Okay, let's break down these sentences. This document presents considerations from the perspective of U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention for implementing the shielding approach in humanitarian settings as outlined in guidance documents focused on camps, displaced populations, and low-resource settings. Hello, talking about camps, it doesn't matter if you're infected or supposedly infected with any of this. It just, if you're low resource, as in low income, or low resource could be in cities or out, whatever they say it is. Honestly, we already know this song and dance. This approach has never been documented, has raised questions and concerns among humanitarian partners who support response and activity in these settings. The purpose of this document is to highlight potential implementation challenges of the shielding approach from CDC's perspective and guide thinking around implementation in the absence of empirical data. As in the absence of data, they're still going to implement this. This is absolutely terrifying. The shielding approach aims to reduce the number of severe C-19 cases by limiting contact between individuals at higher risk of developing severe disease. High risk and the general population low risk. High risk individuals would be temporarily relocated to safe or green zones established at the household, neighborhood, camp, sector, or community level, depending on the context and setting. They would have minimal contact with family and other low-risk residents. So what, are we just supposed to, no big deal? Or, conspiracy theory, right? I'm not even sure what is going on with this, but you try to show people this and how they're literally talking about using camps on the CDC's website. All right, check this out. Here's the summary of the shielding approach. Household level. Specific room area designated for high-risk individuals who are physically isolated from other HH members. Low-risk members should not enter the green zone, blah, blah, blah. Healthy individuals, washing hands, interactions must be social distance, this and that. But check this out. Neighborhood level. A designated shelter, group of shelters, max 5 to 10 households within a small camp or area where high-risk members are grouped together. Neighbors swap households to accommodate high-risk individuals. Now, camp, sector level. A group of shelters, such as schools, community buildings within a camp sector, max 50 high-risk individuals per single green zone, where high-risk individuals are physically isolated together. Per single green zone. So they could have 50 people per green zone. So if they designate 100 areas as green zones, then they would have a lot of people in these camps, right? The fact they're even talking about this should really worry everybody. It really should worry everybody on the way this stuff is going. Now, you can go through here and you can read all 8 pages of this. I'm going to have to try to find the link to where you can download the PDF. But basically, green zones and language of that nature is military language. Well, where did I want to go here? Let's see. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let's see. Okay, summary. The shielding approach is an ambitious undertaking which may prove effective in preventing C19 infection among high-risk populations if well managed. While the premise is based on mitigation strategies used in the United Kingdom, there is no empirical evidence whether this approach will increase, decrease, or have no effect on morbidity and mortality during the C19 whatever in humanitarian settings. So why do it? Because it's not about that. It is not about that at all. This document highlights risks, challenges of implementing this approach, need for additional resources in areas with limited or reduced capacity, indefinite timeline, possible short-term and long-term adverse consequences. Public health not only focuses on the eradication of disease, but addresses the entire spectrum of health and well-being. Populations displaced due to natural disasters or war and conflict are already fragile and have experienced increased mental, physical, or emotional trauma. While the shielding approach is not meant to be coercive, it may appear forced or be misunderstood in humanitarian settings. Let me read that again. While the shielding approach is not meant to be coercive, it may appear forced or be misunderstood in humanitarian settings. As with many community interventions meant to decrease C19 morbidity and mortality, compliance and behavior change are the primary rate-limiting steps and may be driven by social and emotional factors. These changes are difficult in developed, stable settings, thus they may be particularly challenging in humanitarian settings, which bring their own set of multifaceted challenges that need to be taken into account. So basically what they're saying here in this little part of the summary is that they will also use these for people displaced due to natural disasters or war. Because public health not only focuses on eradication of disease, but addresses the entire spectrum of health and well-being. Then it goes into talking about populations displaced due to natural disasters or war, blah, blah, blah. So, I'm not going to go through all of this, of course, but I just wanted to bring this up. I seen this a while ago, but I just came across the actual PDF today, and I'm still reading through it myself. But I read enough to put, to put in here. And look at all these references. Look at that. Excuse me. I will leave a link to where you can download the PDF if I can find it again. It took me a while to find it. I forget what I was even looking into when I did find this. But yes. So they have these set up, and they are to be used not only for what we're currently doing, but I'm sure, with the, quote, public health, they could also... Sorry, guys, I had to sneeze. You probably didn't realize it, but I sneezed, and you didn't want to hear that, so there's that. What I was saying was, they could say that a threat to public health are those who, won't comply with a certain thing. They could probably use these on you as well. And the CDC is newly empowered, right? They are now the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, because whatever they say basically goes. And they don't even work for the government. They're a private entity. Actually, they're owned by and operated by the World Health Organization, which is the medical arm of the United Nations. Is there anything else I should even show anybody when it comes to something like this? And they call it the shielding approach in humanitarian settings. Yeah, and it may appear forced or, coercive, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be humanitarian. Just wanted to bring this up in the beginning of this video. Now let's actually get into the main part of the video. Alright, I want to go ahead and bring this up. And this is from the Ontario Civil Liberties Association. This is called a letter to the unvaccinated. And it was posted on August 2nd. So, what is that? Yesterday? Day before? No, it was yesterday. Yesterday. So, check this out. OCLA researcher Dr. Dennis Rancourt and several fellow Canadian academics penned an open letter to support those who have decided not to accept the mark, we'll say. The group emphasizes the voluntary nature of this medical treatment as well as the need for informed consent and individual risk-benefit assessment. They reject the pressure exerted by public health officials, the news, and social media, and fellow citizens. Control over our bodily integrity may well be the ultimate frontier of the fight to protect civil liberties. And here's the letter. You are not alone. As of July 28, 2021, 29% of Canadians have not received a C-19 mark. And an additional 14% have received one shot. In the US and in the European Union, less than half the population is fully marked. And even in Israel, the world's lab, they say, according to Pfizer, 1/3 of people remain completely unmarked. Politicians and the media have taken a uniform view, scapegoating the unvaccinated for the troubles that have ensued. After 18 months of fear-mongering and lockdowns, it's time to set the record straight. So, already off to a good start with this letter. And these people are brave souls for doing this. It is entirely reasonable and legitimate to say no to insufficiently tested marks for which there is no reliable science. You have a right to assert guardianship of your body and refuse medical treatments if you see fit. You have a right to say no to a violation of your dignity, your integrity, and your bodily autonomy. It is your body, and you have the right to choose. You are right to fight for your children against their mass marks in school. You are right to question whether free and informed consent is at all possible under present circumstances. Long-term effects are unknown. Transgenerational effects are unknown. Mark-induced deregulation of natural immunity is unknown. Potential harm is unknown as the adverse event reporting is delayed, incomplete, and inconsistent between jurisdictions. You are being targeted by mainstream media, government, social engineering campaigns, unjust rules and policies, collaborating employers, and the social media mob. You are being told that you are now the problem, and that the world cannot get back to normal unless you get marked. You are being viciously scapegoated by propaganda and pressured by others around you. Remember, there is nothing wrong with you. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with you at all. At all whatsoever. We are the ones in the right. As unfortunate as it is, people are going around saying whatever. The fact remains that we are the ones in the right. You are inaccurately accused of being a factory for the new variant, when in fact, according to leading scientists, your natural immune system generates immunity to multiple components of the virus. This will promote your protection against a vast range of viral variants and abrogates further spread to anyone else. Yeah, that's called real science, by the way. You know, science that you can actually look into for real. Crazy. You are justified in demanding independent peer-reviewed studies not funded by multinational pharmaceutical companies. All the peer-reviewed studies of short-term safety and short-term efficacy have been funded, organized, coordinated, and supported by these for-profit corporations. And none of the study data have been made public or available to researchers who don't work for these companies. You are right to question the preliminary trial results. The claimed high values of relative efficacy rely on small numbers of tenuously determined infections. Studies were also not blind, where people giving the injections admittedly knew or could deduce whether they were injecting the experimental or the placebo. This is not acceptable scientific methodology for trials. You are correct in your calls for a diversity of scientific opinions. Like in nature, we need a polyculture of information and its interpretations, and we don't have that right now. Choosing not to take the mark is holding space for reason, transparency, and accountability to emerge. You are right to ask, what comes next when we give away authority over our own bodies? Do not be intimidated. You are showing resilience, integrity, and grit. You are coming together in your communities, making plans to help one another, and standing for scientific accountability, free speech, which are required for society to thrive. We are among many who stand with you. And these people here are responsible for this article. Angela Durant, PhD. They're all PhDs. Dennis Rancourt, Klaus Renner, Laurent Leduc, Donald Welsh, John Wagstra, Jan Verbeek, Valentina Capuri. So, this kind of thing gives me hope. This kind of thing gives me hope that there are people out there who are just like us, who are fighting against this thing. Because from what I see on social media, comments on news stories, out in public hearing people talking, it's very easy to lose hope. But this kind of thing gives me hope. Because there are people out there that actually understand what real freedom is and are willing to stand for it. We have to. We have to, or it's gone. Those are literally the only options. Stand for freedom, or it's gone. I will also leave a link to this. So, if you're this far in the video and you started watching as soon as it uploaded, please leave the video, then come back. And all the links should be there, if I remembered. If not, please comment and remind me to put links. I will try my best. Moving on. All right, I was talking a little bit about this yesterday in the live stream, but we'll go ahead and read through this one. Denver rolls out its first mark mandates. Today's the 4th, by the way. I said it was the 3rd. It's the 4th. Denver's cracking its whip to boost citywide mark rates. Why it matters. Top state and local officials agree that thousands more residents need to get the jab in now if Coloradans want to avoid another devastating blow this fall and winter. And how do they know? How do they know? Okay, Denver Mayor Michael Hancock on Monday announced a new mark requirement for the city government's 10,000 plus employees. The city will also invoke its police powers to force private sector workers in high risk, notice how it's in quotes, environments to receive the shot. The first major city to do so. Police powers. Private sector employees covered under the new mandate include those working in nursing homes, homeless shelters, hospitals, correctional facilities, schools, and post-secondary institutions, both public and private. After September 30th, unvaccinated employees won't be allowed to work on site or in the field. Quote, after all our efforts, we're seeing a spike when we generally would get a little bit of a seasonal break. Coupled with that concern is the fact that marks have largely stalled. Denver Public Health Director Bob McDonald said at a briefing Monday, quote, we need to make sure we're ahead of this so we don't see another spike in deaths going into the fall, he told reporters. While there's been a recent increase in mark requirements for employees among local governments across the country, Denver's rules appear to go further than most by applying to certain private contractors. People always said, oh, they can never try to force private businesses and private contractors because they make their own rules. Well, not anymore. In the New World Order, there is only their rule. Their rule, and that's it. So, City Attorney Kristen Bronson tells Axios that Denver's authority to do so derives from 1905 U.S. Supreme Court decision, recognizing state and local governments' police power, which includes mandates issued to protect public health. Violators could be fined up to $5,000 under a new ordinance passed by the City Council Monday night, or face potential jail time. So, we're already seeing the beginning of people refusing and then going to jail. So for all those people that are saying, oh, you don't have to, you just won't be able to go to a store. Now they'll be saying, oh, well, you better or you're going to go to jail. And I'm totally okay with that. Because I am brainwashed. Come on. Come on. And let's skip down here. The big picture. Governor Jared Polis. Interesting name. In a briefing moments after Hancock's echoed Denver's urgency as hospitalization rates rise, saying the state expects it to get worse before it gets better. Polis now says 80% immunization rate is needed to prevent Colorado from going down this path that we've seen in other states. The governor's city returned to He has returned to wearing a mask at the grocery store and other public places, but he does not support a mandate to require their broad use. And that's pretty much it for this one. So, yeah. Denver, the first to roll out police powers to enforce this thing. This is the beginning of phase 3. All this stuff going on right now. I've been talking about the phases for months. Go back on my videos. Go back like even 4 months, 5 months. Hell, even when I first started, go back and listen to what I was saying. All of it is coming true right now. Because I know the agenda. I've been studying for a very long time. I know their tactics. I know what they want. I know how they plan to get it. And most of you do as well. Let's move on. Alright guys, here we are over at, actually, my local news channel. WTOV9. Ohio Valley News. That's what this is. U.S. employers ratchet up the pressure on the unmarked. And see, they got the pictures of the QR codes. Proof of mark required with the QR code, just like China's social credit score. Employers are losing patience with unvaccinated workers. For months, most employers relied on information campaigns, bonuses, and other incentives to encourage their workforces to get the mark. Now, a growing number are imposing rules to make it more onerous for employees to refuse, from outright mandates to requiring the unvaccinated to undergo regular testing. Among employers getting tougher are the federal government, the state governments, California and New York, tech giants, Google, Facebook, Walt Disney Company, and the NFL. Some hospitals, universities, restaurants, bars, and other entertainment venues have also started requiring marks. I would go ahead and vote on this thing, but then it'll take me to another page and then all of that, so. But the new measures are unlikely to affect many of the millions of unmarked Americans. Many of the companies that are requiring marks, mostly office workers, who are already largely marked and are reluctant to work alongside those who aren't. In contrast, major companies that rely on low-income blue-collar workers, food manufacturers, warehouses, supermarkets, and other store chains are shying away from mandates for fear of driving away employees and worsening the labor shortages such businesses are facing. Tyson Foods, for instance, said about half the U.S. workforce, 56,000 employees, have received shots after the meat and poultry processor hosted more than 100 mark events since February. The company said it has no plans to impose a mandate to reach the other half. Walmart, Amazon, the country's two largest private employers, if that's what you want to call it. You know, sometimes they're corporations, sometimes they're private employers, sometimes they're small businesses. Sometimes they identify as people, like, you know, when they're being sued. Have also declined to require its hourly workers to get marked, continuing to rely on strategies such as bonuses and on-site access to marks. But in a potentially powerful signal, Walmart said employees at its headquarters will be required to get marked by October 4th. Going into the winter, guys. Just because they're saying this now doesn't mean they won't. Because you know they got to lay it on a little at a time. I don't even want to know what it's going to be like a year from now. On August 4th, 2022, I don't even know if I'm going to still be sitting here making these videos. Because I'm not taking no vaccine. Never. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. There's nothing that anybody could ever do to get me to take that thing. The biggest precedent so far has come from the federal government, the nation's largest employer. Oh, yeah, the nation's largest employer, the federal government, whatever. President Joe Biden announced last week that all federal employees and contractors must get marked or put up with weekly testing and lose privileges such as official travel. Federal government said it will cover the cost of weekly tests, As for other employers, insurance may pay for such testing at some workplaces, but not others. Biden's decision could embolden other employers by signaling they would be on solid legal ground to impose similar rules. Actually, I was talking to my wife about this because she was like, we were talking about if our work mandates the thing. Excuse me. And she said that right now she doesn't think that they will because they're always saying like, oh, we respect your right and this and that. And then I said, well, they say that not because they care about your right or they don't care about that. They care about not being sued. So if they feel like they have the federal government's blessing and then they could not get sued, they would definitely impose it. Companies don't care about your individual rights. Nobody cares about their individual rights. People don't even care about their own individual rights. I saw this guy the other day. Should have put it in the Sheeple Comments video. He said collective liberty outweighs individual liberty any day of the week. That's something that a communist would say. Pretty sure Lenin said that. So, what? Krupp said companies face complicated considerations that go beyond legalities, including deep resistance to marks in many states where they operate. And then Walmart might have a hard time justifying requirements for their workers while allowing shoppers to remain unmarked. Stores have mostly avoided mark requirements for customers for fear of alienating them and because of their difficulty in trying to verify their status. Oh, don't worry. They got something lined up for that. Once enough people got this thing, they're going to be like, how? How are we going to know who's marked and who's not? And they're going to say, oh, well, we kind of already have that covered. Don't be mad. But, yeah, you all now have an official digital identity. And, it's tied to you. Kind of goes hand in hand with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, but no big deal. Just take it. And look at this. Here's another article. Check this out. Private companies, government agencies can require their employees to get marked, and this is a week ago. As a condition of working there, individuals retain the right to refuse, but they have no ironclad right to legal protection. What? And of course, 122 likes. Whatever. Oh, check this out. But a shift is building amid frustration over plateauing mark rates and alarm over the spread of the more contagious Delta variant. As of Monday, 69.9, as in 666, of course, of American adults had gotten at least one shot, missing Biden's goal of 70% by the 4th of July, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. You like how they have to sneak that 666 in there? Always, right? And of course, we know that this group of New York City restaurants and bars now requiring employees and customers to be marked by September 7th. Same as San Francisco. Made a similar decision. Blah, 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 blah. This guy said that he had recently had to close a bar for a night after his bartender, who was fully marked, tested positive and replacement could not be found. Which actually brings me to my next article that will get this video taken down. Okay, now for some reason on this independent whatever, they want me to subscribe to read the whole article, but we really don't need to read this whole article, and it'll give me time to read other things. But check this out. My family and I all have the whatever it is. You know what? Fuck it. My family and I all have COVID. We're fully vaccinated. It's clear we need another lockdown. Think about that. my family and I all have COVID. We're fully vaccinated. It's clear we need another lockdown. Does that make sense to anybody at all? If the first lockdown worked, why do we need a second one? If the first lockdown didn't work, why do a second one? And if these vaccines and all that work, well, this guy's saying, my family and I all have COVID and we're fully vaccinated. It's clear we need another lockdown. What is that going to do? Is that going to, are the government going to lock everything down? Everyone's going to be cured overnight, according to them? Oh, there goes the police, man. Yeah, keep driving. Keep driving. Why are you stopping? Why is he backing up? Oh, jeez. Hold on, guys. Yeah, I thought for sure he was going to stop here. Now he's just sitting in the middle of the road. I don't know if he's watching the football people or, listening to what I'm saying, because I got my windows down. Yeah, who cares? Listen if you want to, bro. Okay, so this guy's claiming that his whole family has COVID. They're fully marked. Still begging for another lockdown. Dr. F, we'll say, and the Biden administration don't want to order further lockdowns or mandates because it's potentially politically inconvenient. But as someone with a breakthrough case of Delta variant, I couldn't disagree more. Look at this guy. I wonder how far I can get before they tell me that I have to be subscribed. It'll be coming. It came up earlier. But it doesn't really matter because I just wanted to show you guys that. This is all just a bunch of crap propaganda. I will link this one, but I wanted to get to some other stuff. But, yes. So they're already saying my family and I, and people can still get it even though they're fully marked. And they're still begging for another lockdown. So, yeah. This is literally where we are. New World Order, right? Right. Okay, here we are over at ABC News. 2 more officers who responded to the January 6th Capitol riot have died by suicide. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? Especially if you watch the Woo's News video, which I mirrored 2 months back. President Joe Biden weighed in on the news of the officers' deaths on Tuesday. 2 Washington Metropolitan Police Department officers who responded to the January 6th riot died by suicide in July. The department announced on Monday, nearly 7 months after the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of pro-Trump supporters. Officer Kyle DeFreytag, who was on the force since November 2016, and Officer Gunther Hashida, 18-year veteran, are the latest of now 3 MPD officers who have died by suicide since January 6th, the department said. Anybody else find this a little fishy? Like maybe these guys knew something that they weren't supposed to know? Or partook in something that they fully knew what was going on, under promises of a good paycheck or whatever. It always ends like this. President Joe Biden expressed his gratitude toward the officers in a tweet on Tuesday morning, hailing them as American heroes. Quote, when the United States Capitol and our very democracy, constitutional republic, were under attack on January 6th, Officer Hashida and DeFreytag courageously risked their lives to defend them. They were American heroes. Jill and I are keeping their loved ones in our prayers during this difficult time. It's not clear if the events of January 6th contributed to the officers' suicides, and research shows that law enforcement officers experience stressors as a regular part of the job and it can struggle with mental health issues. Of course, they're going to blame this on, mental health. It's easy just to label that, just to throw that out there. Easy. And this is going to help create more division. Everything always does. Everything always does. And they just keep going on about on a daily basis. Officers experience job-related stressors that can range from interpersonal conflicts to extremely traumatic events, such as vehicle crashes, homicide, and suicide. Blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to get to this one part down here. January 6th rally in support of then-President Donald Trump turned deadly after Trump encouraged his supporters to march to Capitol Hill, where Congress was meeting to certify Biden's election win. Rioters breached barricades and security checkpoints, forcing Vice President Mike Pence and lawmakers to evacuate or shelter in place, temporarily disrupting the certification. At least 140 police officers were injured, and the Capitol building suffered approximately $1.5 million damage. So, we've all seen the Woo's News thing. We've all seen how choreographed and scripted it was. We know the Homeland Security documents. We know about their false flags and all of that. We know about their crisis actors. We know about the people that were there, said that they were actors, and then you had that one guy, he was like, I guess we're all done here, so yeah, we can leave. We know that girl didn't really die, obviously, because it showed her literally opening her eyes on the ground when she was supposed to be dead, right? All the inconsistencies that were going on with that. I'm just wondering if these cops knew or were going to, sing to the world about what happened. Karen Solomon, who runs the Blue Help, said officers are afraid to speak to the media about January 6th events because of fear of losing their jobs. I don't think that's why they're afraid to speak. Probably afraid to speak because, they keep dying of suicide. This is crazy. This is crazy, and they're talking about mental health. This is also going to help them, disarm the police after they disarm us. Yep, it's all about that. I will put this link in there, but I really wanted to get to some other things real quick. Hope you guys are ready for this one. Fauci fears a COVID variant worse than Delta could be coming, and, why wouldn't it? They're going to continue this on forever. Forever they're going to continue this. They're never going to let this go. I really hope people understand that. They are never going to let this go. Ever. If America's current C-19 surge continues unabated into the fall and winter, the country will likely face an even more deadly strain of the virus that could evade the current marks, NIAID Director Anthony Fauci told McClatchy Wednesday. So they're already setting it up to where they can say that the marks didn't work and you need more. Because that's never going to end, right? Agenda 2030, immunization agenda. No one left behind. All that was put in place way before this. Fauci's comments underscore the importance of acting quickly to mark the tens of millions of Americans who have not been inoculated against the virus. Knew that was coming? The current surge in coronavirus cases nationwide is being driven by the Delta variant, which is already more contagious than the original strain. Well, they don't have a test for it, so how do they even know? The big picture. As the situation continues to spread due to insufficient mark rates, it's been given ample time to mutate into a more dangerous new variant in the fall and winter, Fauci said. Quite frankly, we're very lucky that the marks that we have now do very well against the variants, particularly against severe illness, Fauci said, emphasizing that this might not be the case with the new variant. If another one comes along that has an equally high capability of transmitting, but also is much more severe, then we could really be in trouble. People who are not getting marked mistakenly think it's only about them, but it isn't. It's about everybody else also. Yeah, that's why we're trying to educate the world and tell them what it actually is. And these people can sit on their high horses and say that they care about everybody else, and that's why they went and did it, but no. You go ask them why they went and did it. Oh, because I just want to get back to normal life. Oh, because I don't want to get sick. Never is it, oh, because I'm worried about my neighbor. Never. They only use that when they're arguing with somebody over it. So, yeah. Other variants are already cropping up. Oh, gee. On Tuesday, South Korea announced that it had detected 2 cases of the Delta Plus variant. Delta Plus? Oh, man. What about Delta Minus? Times are divided by? Shit, pretty soon they're going to be like, oh, what am I looking for? Oh, the Max AC variant or the popcorner variant. Just making stuff up, literally just making stuff up. Okay, so South Korea announced that it had a case of the Delta Plus, one in a man who had recently returned from the U.S. Reuters reports some experts believe the Delta Plus variant could be more contagious than the Delta variant. The Lambda variant, which originated from Peru last year, has already been detected in the U.S. Recent studies indicated the Lambda could be more resistant to the current marks, according to Reuters. So they're already setting this up to continue on forever. Literally forever, because this is where we are. This is the New World Order. They know that they can get away with this because, well, frankly, most people are really, really stupid. And that's very unfortunate. Let's move on. Okay, and it wouldn't be, a repeat of 2020, literally by the book. That's what they're doing right now if we didn't have a little bit of this. Governor pardoned St. Louis couple who pointed guns at Black Lives Matter protesters. The couple pleaded guilty in June. Look, St. Louis AR-15 couple pleads guilty to misdemeanor charges. AR-15 couple. AR-15 couple. They just got to put the name of that rifle in there. Because that's the big scary one, right? The one that's super scary, right? Missouri Governor Mike Parson announced Tuesday that he had pardoned Mark and Patricia McCloskey, St. Louis couple who were charged with waving guns at a group of Black Lives Matter protesters outside their home last year. Mark McCloskey was seen holding a semi-automatic rifle, while his wife was holding a handgun on their property in June 28, 2020, as a group of protesters passed by their house, prosecutors said. So, they were on their property holding weapons. Not a crime. The couple were filmed shouting, "Get out," to the crowd, but there was no physical confrontation between them and the protesters. Well, yeah, because they had guns. If they didn't, like, those people already broke that gate down. If they didn't, I'm sure they would have been attacked. They contended they were protecting their property during the protests. Several prominent conservative leaders, including President Donald Trump, defended the couple. The McCloskeys were guest speakers at the 2020 Republican National Convention. I'm sure this could have been this also could have been a ploy, a false flag, which it kind of looks like it, right? 2 middle-aged, suburban, high middle-class people with a stock rifle and a stock-looking handgun are out there on, being filmed in the age of social media, screaming back and forth between them and the protesters during the whole George Floyd thing. A grand jury indicted the couple in October, and Pearson told reporters he would consider pardoning them. The couple pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and harassment charges in June. They surrendered their weapons, and Patricia McCloskey was fined $2,000, while her husband was fined $750. When Judge David Mason asked Mark McCloskey if he acknowledged that his actions put people at risk of personal injury, McCloskey replied, "I sure did, Your Honor." And he's also running for U.S. Senate, told reporters outside the courthouse after the hearing that he'd do it again. "Anytime the mob approaches me, I'll do what I can to put them in imminent threat of physical injury, because that's what kept them from destroying my house and my family." The couple and the governor didn't immediately provide statements about the pardons. This was only meant to cause more division among the people, especially between races. Especially. And what breeds from that is, between classes, between anything. And this has been building up for a long time because, of course, this is part of the societal reset, right? And why now? Why now are they bringing this up? Well, everything else is going on. They bring this up. Nothing is by accident. Everything is intentional. Everything. Nothing is isolated. Everything is connected. It's all part of the agenda, especially if it's on television. People have been so just beat down, brainwashed, turned against themselves and their fellow man over pretty much a lie for the past however long. They're going to keep playing this stuff. They're going to keep playing this stuff. You just had that video of the cops I saw on one of Richie's videos. In the middle of a city, I think it was New York, cops knocked a dude out while being filmed for everybody to see. And Richie was saying, like what I would say, that's so, when they got the UN to come in to investigate racism in the United States, right? Inviting them in under false pretenses, they could then disarm the police as well as us. That brings me to something else that I wanted to read on here. Okay, many people don't know about this. Many people don't know about this. This is, a partial quote or a writing from Abraham Lincoln about the Civil War and what it was over and who started it. A lot of people think that, a bunch of people in the South just one day wanted to rise up against the North because they were mad, because they wanted to keep doing what they were doing and the North wasn't letting them, so they got mad and tried to rebel and lost. No, that's not what happened. Let's listen to old Abe Lincoln tell us what happened. And this is why the man got a bullet to the head, by the way. So, let's get into that. Okay, Abraham Lincoln, June 8th, 1864. This war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. Though there were great differences of opinion between the South and the North on the question of slavery, neither Jeff Davis nor any one of the leading men of the Confederacy would have dared to attack the North had they not relied on the promises of the Jesuits that, under the mask of democracy. The money and the arms of the Roman Catholic, even the arms of France, were at their disposal if they would attack us. I pity the priests, the bishops, and the monks of Rome in the United States when the people realize that they are, in great part, responsible for the tears and bloodshed in this war. The later, the more terrible the retribution be. I conceal what I know on that subject from the knowledge of the nation. For if the people know the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war, and it would at once take a tenfold more savage and bloody character. It would become merciless, as all religious wars are. It would become a war of extermination on both sides. The Protestants of both North and the South would surely unite to exterminate the priests and the Jesuits, if they could hear what Professor Morse had said to me of the plots made in the very city of Rome to destroy this republic. If they could learn how the priests, the nuns, and the monks, which daily land on our shores, under the pretext of preaching their religion, instructing the people in their schools, taking care of the sick in the hospitals, are nothing else but emissaries of the Pope. You guys see that? Well, of Napoleon and the other despots of Europe, to undermine our institutions, alienate the hearts of our people from our Constitution and our laws, destroy our schools, and prepare a reign of anarchy here as they have done in Ireland, Mexico, Spain, and wherever there are, there are cried people who want to be free. So, Abraham Lincoln literally, and the actual letter is very long. Very, very long, but this part is very important. The war was started by the same people who are still starting all the wars. If people knew this, one, they would know why Abe Lincoln got killed. It wasn't some crazy John Wilkes Booth running up and doing whatever. I mean, he might have done that, but it's because Abe Lincoln, just like Kennedy, spoke out against the powers that be. And he says in here that the North and South priests and people of religious faith would unite against the Jesuits. But he didn't want that. He could have told the whole country about who started the war and why. It wasn't just a bunch of, what did they tell us on TV? It wasn't just a bunch of crazy rednecks who decided one day to stand up and come take out the North because they wanted to keep people enslaved. No, Abe Lincoln even says we had great differences, but they would never dare attack the North had they not relied on the promises of the Jesuits. So, I'm going to leave a link to this so you guys can check it out, show people. But Abe Lincoln literally knew what was going on before it even happened. He knew that it would escalate into a war. And yes, they tried to destroy our republic back then. They failed, but they also succeeded. Because this and that whole thing laid seeds for what we are seeing now. And it's just gotten a lot worse. Maybe if people would have known back then and it would have been recorded in our history books, maybe the brainwashing wouldn't have been as successful. But they owned all the media and newspapers back then, so, they could print whatever they want. Especially when they killed the President of the United States in a movie theater. So, yeah, there's that. I wanted to bring this up for a while. Actually, I wanted to bring it up in one of my older videos, but I just forgot over time and everything like that. I'm actually working on a video right now. Well, not filming it, but I'm working on gathering stuff for a video. It's got all kinds of things to do with, like, Jesuits, symbolism, history of Freemasonry, Knights Templar, just all of that, and the New Age movement and how it all ties in. I've been working on it for a while, but it's not quite there yet. And it's probably going to be in 2 parts, because it's going to take me a while to get through it all. Let me see if I got anything else for you guys. Okay, guys, here's my last article. I meant to bring this up earlier, but I didn't, but we'll go over it right now. For many, the belated realization that COVID will be a, quote, long war sparks anger and denial. A long war. In May, when the CDC said fully marked people could ditch masks and social distancing, it seemed to signal a return to normalcy. Well, Klaus Schwab already done told us in the book that we're never going to return to normal, so there's that. But epidemiologists cautioned at the time that the move wasn't likely to be permanent and shouldn't be interpreted as the end of C-19 as a daily concern. Colder weather or a right hook in the virus's evolution could bring restrictions right back. And they're looking for that, aren't they? Any reason to bring the restrictions right back. Bunch of cowards. Still, Americans seem shocked by the recent turn of events. Last week, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention advised everyone, even those who've gotten the mark, to go back to indoor masking, a decision driven by new data, showing the hyper-contagious Delta variant colonizes the nose and throat of some marked people just as well as the unmarked, meaning they may just as easily spread this new version of the virus, while stilling being protected against the worst manifestations of the disease. Excuse me. Light my cigarette real quick. I would usually pause to do that, but I'm at the end. The prospect of contending with a prolonged outbreak phase and a just gain to a constantly evolving roster of restrictions has brought back another feature of situation living in America: anger. This time, it's not just the mostly Republican anti-masking refrain rearing its defiant head, though fights over school mask mandates have returned with a vengeance. Coast to coast and across the political spectrum, contempt for unmarked people is rising. As planned, it's the unmarked folks that are letting us down. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, a Republican, said on July 22nd, as her state, with one of the lowest mark rates in the country, reeled from a 530% rise in C-19 hospitalization in just 3 weeks. Among the marked, there's a sense that the freedoms they gained by getting the marks, travel, eating out, concerts, sports, school, seeing friends, are now being jeopardized by those who are still holding out. Not true. And freedom is not defined as just these little things. And you don't gain freedom. You already have it. Obviously, the person that wrote this article doesn't truly understand actual freedom. And it's being jeopardized, but not by us, but, by the people bringing about the New World Order, Great Reset, Agenda 21. This was the plan. I found a post of mine from Facebook from, April of 2020. I was on furlough at the time. I wasn't making videos yet. And I was saying that they were going to turn the people who take this thing against the people who don't by blaming the people who don't for not returning to normal. But the plan is to never go back to normal. So, if this was a real thing, we would not have been able to sit here and call every single step accurately, flawlessly. Though this new flavor of outrage might look and sound like righteous indignation, mental health professionals say what's behind it is fear. It's scary to admit that somebody else has power over you and you're at their mercy and you're afraid of them, but showing that is not a very American ideal, said David Rosemarin, Associate Professor of Psychiatry, Harvard Medical School, clinician at McLean Hospital. Instead of expressing that fear, it's a lot more comfortable to blame somebody else. Gee. Anger is what people in his profession refer to as secondary emotion. It's a feeling that arises in response to a more primal emotion like fear and anxiety over having some aspect of your life threatened. The reality is there are millions of people who are miseducated about something. They're making a big mistake that will have massive consequences that might affect you and your family, and that makes you scared. But nobody is saying that. Part of the problem is cultural. In America, there's an expectation you have to be a god, he said. What? Expectation you have to be a god? Whoever said anything like that? I mean, that was the original lie, and I guess that would make sense why we're, Babylon, Mystery Babylon. That makes sense. Showing vulnerability is akin to blasphemy. Just look at the backlash Olympic gymnast Simone Biles faced last week in response to pulling out of the team event in Tokyo. Citing her mental health, he'd like to see leaders at the state and national level do a better job modeling that kind of behavior rather than leaping to blaming and shaming. For those who've made a living studying situations, they see another lesson in the current outpouring of outrage: the danger of setting unrealistic expectations. One of the big mistakes of the U.S. COVID response, among many, was at the beginning not to make it clear this was going to be a long war. This is what they're saying. Because in wartime, they can do a lot of things that they normally would never be able to do. So, said historian John Barry wrote the definitive account of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, the Great Influenza. For much of the first year of the situation, many top public health officials touted the idea that our way out of the situation was reaching herd immunity, a phenomenon by which a pathogen stops spreading because so many people are protected against it, either by previous exposure or by mark. Between natural infections and marks, if we could get 60 or 70% of the population with some immune memory to SARS-CoV-2, the thinking went, we could erect a wall of protection around the still vulnerable enough to stamp out transmission of the virus entirely. But before Delta emerged, some scientists were having doubts that this would work. If other endemic coronaviruses were any clue, the immunity from natural infections waned within a few years. Marks were blocking transmission, but not entirely. New variants could erode away the protections conferred by both. Now Delta appears to be doing just that. So what? They flip-flop. Does it work against it or does it not? The hypocrisy is astounding. A more likely scenario for exiting the situation phase of C-19, many scientists told Stat earlier this year, was that over time, likely a period of years, our immune systems would learn about SARS-CoV-2 to stave off the deadliest symptoms of infection. In this way, the situation pathogen would become an endemic one, circulating among us, causing smaller seasonal surges of milder illness. That's not even going on. Literally, that's not even going on. None of that is going on. Everybody's still fine. Everybody's still fine. I just want to get down through here real quick because I'm running over time and I'm not sure how much I got on my recording. All this is crap anyway. I'm just trying to see. Let's see. It's not the time span most people have been thinking along. As a result, people are now not just angry, but in denial that after all we've been through, the lockdowns, the staggering death toll, the historic race to build a mark, after all that, SARS-CoV-2 is still with us, a threat that still needs to be navigated. That's why this time around, epidemiologists like Levine fear it will be even more difficult to get people to don masks, especially those who believe the situation was over for them the moment they received their shots. Jeez, I don't even know what to say anymore. There is a way in which the rhetoric around herd immunity has been a disservice, and I think we're probably seeing it make this moment worse as people are starting to face in a tangible way in their communities that isn't going away, said Levine. That's good news, she said, is that nothing in the coronavirus' recent evolution suggests it won't eventually transition to being a mild endemic virus. Join the family of common cold causing bugs that could change if new variants were to deal young kids much more severe cases of disease, or completely blindside the immune systems of people who'd been marked or previously infected. Thankfully, at this point, both of those things are holding. Oh, look, so the light at the end of the tunnel for me is a long-term picture still doesn't look so bad. It's just that it's not the kind of get this to magical threshold of marked coverage and it's all over. It's a slower progression with a less clear-cut end. That doesn't mean there's not an end. It's just harder to see, definitely. And disappointing when it didn't happen the way we were maybe led to believe. And people were led to believe that it was going to be over, because they needed people to get mad and turn on each other. But we knew that it wasn't going to be over as soon as they came out with 14 days to flatten the curve, right? We knew it wasn't going to be over when Klaus Schwab published the book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, when he said, quote, "Many of us are pondering when life will return to normal. The short response is, never." We knew at Event 201 that when they launched this thing, it was never going to end. Look where we are now. Look where we are now. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.